Hi guys, it's Mandy from Mandyleeplays, and I'm so excited for Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. I'm just beyond stoked, and I'm sure you guys are too. So to help the wait, I decided to make a video on other strategy RPGs that are a lot like Fire Emblem. But before we begin, hit that like button if you end up liking the video, and consider subscribing if you're not yet subscribed. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first game on the list is Advanced Wars 1+2 Boot Camp. Advanced Wars Reboot Camp is a gorgeous remake that pairs Advanced Wars with Black Hole Rising, which is its sequel, in one polished package. So we're kicking off with the game that is the least like Fire Emblem, but there's a point to it, just hear me out. I put this on the list because it is actually made by Intelligent Systems, who make Fire Emblem. Now, Advanced Wars isn't exactly celebrated for its deep storytelling like it is in Fire Emblem, but it's definitely charming, filled with witty banter between the characters, and it's a really cool experience. Although me personally, I suck at it, but Advanced Wars has to be like the most complex of them all. It's not the easiest game on this list, but Advanced Wars has that familiar tactical style to it. From the turn-based flow to the critical importance of positioning in the terrain, every move really carries the weight. One slip up and it could be a wipeout. It truly shares the undeniable Intelligent System pedigree that makes their strategy RPG games so addicting. Now for the gameplay, rather than guiding a single hero, instead you guide a battalion, including infantry, heavy machinery, artillery, and massive battleships. And something that's really important in these games is your terrain. That can make or break a battle. For example, forests provide defensive cover, mountains act as natural barriers, and roads facilitate rapid movement across the map. And there's also a very diverse roster where you get to pick between unique leaders, and each leader has their distinct flair and passive traits. So if you want a tactical Fire Emblem feel game, stripped of its permadeath and high fantasy drama, featuring tanks and warships, then this is the game for you. Also, this is one of the shorter strategy RPGs on this list, but it's also very fun. So to end this, yeah, this game is not like Fire Emblem in the tone or story, but it is a lot like Fire Emblem in the gameplay, and it was made by Intelligent System. And plus, these games don't have to be like a one-on-one copy of Fire Emblem. That would be boring. Now for the next game, and that is Final Fantasy Tactics. And yes, it's a lot like Fire Emblem. This game is easily one of the most narratively rich strategy RPGs in this list. You follow Ramza, the youngest son of a noble house, as he is swept into the tides of the War of the Lions, which brings in a political feud between lords, quickly descending into a grim civil war, involving a corrupt church, shadowy conspiracies, and ancient monstrous entities, pulling strings from the darkness. It's a lot like the real world, right? Without the monsters, of course. Or are there? The narrative is presented through the lens of historian centuries later, to find what really happened. But what truly cements this game as a legendary story is the refusal to rely on one-dimensional villains. I'm always for my villains to be more than one-dimensional, and it makes their descent into darkness kind of understandable. Like, there's some things in real life where I'm just like, I won't do, but I understand why somebody would do that. But that's just the story. What's going on in the gameplay? Well, Tactics utilizes a grid-based system where verticality is a game changer. Holding the highest ground provides a distinctive tactical edge over your foes. However, unlike Fire Emblem's approach of locking heroes in specific growth tracks and predefined classes, of course, not all Fire Emblem games have that. Some of them you can change your party's class. Whereas in Final Fantasy Tactics, it's way more easier. Tactics grants you the immersed freedom of the job system, offering total agency over your squad's development. And I highly recommend focusing your resource on a core team of 5. If you spread your experience too thin across your roster, the game will be more difficult, as the difficulty could spike up randomly. But back to the job system. It allows you to mold any unit, generic or storybound, into these jobs: the knight or dragoon, ninja, summoner, and a dozen others. And while this game doesn't have permadeath in the traditional sense, it has something like it. So when a unit falls, a countdown appears. If you fail to revive within 3 turns, they vanish forever, adding a layer of urgency to every recovery. And I actually did not know that because I skipped tutorials. Yeah, I know it's my fault. And I lost a few characters because of it. I'm just like, okay, well, it said it doesn't have permadeath, so why should I be worried? And then they're gone, and I'm like, Oops. Anyways, I still don't like how people say there's no permadeath, but there is permadeath. It's just done differently. Now, in the beginning, I was really hesitant about playing this game because it looks so dated. Keep in mind this game came out for the GBA, but I'm so glad I did because the game is really good. And plus, they did update a few things like visuals and streamlined quality of life features, except the permadeath, but whatever. But all this to say, it is the best time to play Final Fantasy Tactics. Now moving on to one of my personal favorites, and that is Unicorn Overlord. This game is awesome. The only thing I didn't really like was the story. It was a bit generic, but everything else was awesome, and it has a unique feature to it. Unicorn Overlord is the latest masterpiece from Vanillaware, the legendary studio behind 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, and it features their signature hand-drawn aesthetic, which is a very soft aesthetic, and each character in this game has a different personality to them, and the environments are just gorgeous. But let's dig into the mechanical reason why this game is for you if you like Fire Emblem. So I'm gonna say a bit of the story, but again, the story was not my favorite, a bit too generic, but it might be somebody's favorite. So you step into the boots of Alan, an exile royal from Cornea, whose lands have been seized by the tyrannical empire. Oh geez, why does this sound so familiar? A prince being taken to a secluded land to train, and then they go to get their empire back. Sounds a lot like Fire Emblem. But anyways, your mission is to reclaim your birthright, sparking a liberation movement that spans the entire world. So the story beats are a lot like a Fire Emblem game, but what makes this game really different is the unique gameplay flow. So instead of the basic tactical grid where you have to move each character, in Unicorn Overlord, you instead move a unit of characters. So you essentially move squads instead of units, comprising up to 5 different characters. Also, your squads can't just be a group of people put together. You really want to think of who's in that squad, because somebody might have a horse and then you can make the horse guy your leader, so you get to move farther on the map. Or if you have a Pegasus rider as a leader, they can move even farther on the map. So you really want to think about your squad, who's the leader, all that stuff. And another thing I want to mention is that this game is in real time, so you can't just sit there and do nothing. The units and everything moves, and when they clash together is when they do the battle. They really did a good job with having that feature and not making it too difficult or too overwhelming. And you want to position your units in ways where you kind of have the upper hand even before the battle begins. And also you need to have somebody who could hold the line in like the base camp, because if your base camp gets raided, it's game over. There were times where I was so into the game, I was deep in the map, all my units were deployed, and I freaking forgot about my base camp, and then there was this one enemy who just slid right in, and it was game over. I was pretty pissed. And it has a lot of the character bonding moments too, and pairing compatible personalities isn't just about flavor, it provides an actual tangible combat benefits, mirroring what Fire Emblem does with their social links and systems. Everything in this game is fantastic. Again, the story is not the best, but it's suitable. It's such a mechanically rich game that is a lot like, say it with me, Fire Emblem. Next on the list is Valkyria Chronicles 4. This is kind of a hidden gem amongst the strategy RPG games. Not a lot of people have played it, but now I'm here to tell you to play it. So if you're a Fire Emblem fan who appreciates gritty war drama over high fantasy, you absolutely cannot sleep on this title. This game is set in a European setting of Europa, and it leans heavily into the World War influences, pulling visual cues from 1930s and 40s. So the narrative follows Claude Wallace, such an American name, and the soldiers of Squad E, serving the Atlantic Federation in a brutal campaign as they fight against the Imperial Alliance. It's not really a lighthearted adventure, story-wise. Allies get hurt and characters could perish. So this game does have permadeath. But the presentation of this game is just beyond unique. It actually has a very watercolor aesthetic to it. It's kind of like a illustrative journal. But this game has very emotional bonding moments between the characters, which is a lot like what Fire Emblem does. Mechanically, however, this is where the game does its own thing. So instead of relying on a standard grid, this game actually utilizes the immovable blitz system, which blends tactics with real-time movement. When it's your turn, you take direct third-person control of your chosen units, moving them across the battlefield yourself. You'll be ducking behind barricades and peeking around corners before ending your turn. So instead of having this overview of the map, you actually have to control the characters, make sure they're positioned right, so they don't get caught by the enemy. It gives you a more personal feel to it because you're not this big overlord just moving people on a grid. You actually have to do it yourself and walk to different positions. And navigating the terrain while dodging enemy fire makes every single turn feel really intense. Squad E has a lot of different characters, like a lot of characters, and a majority of these characters do have a unique backstory. And in my opinion, Valkyria Chronicles 4 is the pinnacle of the series. I did play Valkyria Chronicles, the first one. It's really good too, and I recommend it as well. Simply put, Valkyria Chronicles 4 mirrors a lot of the greatest qualities from Fire Emblem while still being unique. So if you haven't played it yet, play it. Alrighty, now on to the last pick, and this one is different, let's just say that, but I picked Triangle Strategy. Now, it's no secret, I don't really like this game, mainly because of the story, but the gameplay is really good. It's a Team Asado game, and it's a lot like Fire Emblem, so I thought, you know what, it would be incredibly petty for me to keep this out, so here it is. And this game, as you can see, is in the HD 2D aesthetic. Now for the story, you step into the role of Serenoa Woodford, a noble gentleman tasked with guiding his house through the volatile three-way war between Glenberg, Aspfrost, and Hyzen. This conflict has fractured the nation, and everybody is in an all-out war and clashing over the vital resources like salt and iron. Now the gimmick of this game is the scales of conviction. That's why it's called Triangle Strategy, because there's 3 different outcomes and you have to pick which one's the best. The characters honestly were really good and you could bond with them. Now on the gameplay front, which has a lot of things similar to Fire Emblem, where you have a classic grid-based warfare that is vertically prominent for maximizing your damage and accuracy. And then there's the heavy emphasis on environmental strategy, such as igniting oil to create a fire or flash freezing water to outmaneuver the enemy. So yeah, gameplay wise, it's fantastic. That's my favorite part. Story wise, it wasn't the best, but it is a lot like Fire Emblem, though Fire Emblem has better stories. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please let me know if you're going to try any of these games, or do you have games you want to recommend that I haven't tried? I would love to hear them. Please hit that like button if you liked the video, and also please consider subscribing if you're not yet subscribed. So with all that being said, I hope you guys have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day, and as always, play a good game. Peace.